name is Aaron, and I am once again fortunate enough to meet up. It's been a while and talk to my friend, mentor, Master Gunner Sergeant John Abbraciamento. So, John, how have you been?
I'm good, man. You know what? Like I said before, anytime I get a chance to talk to you, my day's gotten a lot better. You and I have been through a lot together, and it's amazing the friendship we developed over a year, and we came from different directions doing it in the Marine Corps. And you have no, and I told this before, and you kind of shucks it off. You have no idea. That's why I singled you out in my retirement. You have no idea how many times I got on a job and I looked at this, I saw you were there, and I was like, we're golden. This is going to work just fine. So
I appreciate it, and I remember that, and it truly meant a lot. That I know when you invited me, and then number two that you mentioned me during your retirement speech. So I am grateful. I'm grateful for your friendship. I remember the first time I met you, and you were going down the hallway there outside of the barracks, in front of the offices, and you were asking me where the S1 was, and
yeah.
I called you Master Gunner Sergeant, and you said, "Call me John." Now I'm like, I can't do that. There you go. One day you'll feel comfortable, and you will. So I am comfortable with it. And like I said, you're right. We built a great relationship in the time that we met each other, and
yeah,
I mean, even after our time in service, we continue to keep in contact. And like I said, I'm grateful for your friendship and your time. I did ask you to bring a little something to the conversation. So, you got anything in your cup?
I have water in mine for now because I went out with my wife and my wife's nephew, so I have to hydrate for a little bit longer.
Okay, that's all right. I mean, a drink is a drink.
Right.
So, as we start this off, I guess my first question for you is, how do you define? Well, let me backtrack. Just tell us a little bit about yourself. Your background. The time in service, what you did while you were in the military, and then what are the things that you're doing now outside of the retirement life?
I grew up in New York City. Very grateful. I grew up in a very, kind of strict Irish Catholic Italian household. And very lucky. I freelanced in New York. I was all set to be a history major. I was not going to be a musician. And then I got into a really good school. One thing led to another, and I started, as soon as I started getting my master's in New York City, I started freelancing, and I was subbing with the New York Philharmonic. A lot of things fell my way, not because I had more talent than anybody. It's just that I figured out early how to work with others because I had more chances of getting work. There's only one principal player in any section, but then there were 3 or 4 people who were section players. And I realized, wait a minute, 3 or 4 is a greater number than 1. So I quickly figured out how to work well with others. And that skill is important, and understanding what my role was. And one of the, still one to consider the greatest principal trumpet players. And, at that time he was in New York Philharmonic, now he's retired. He had said to others about me, he said, look, John always knew how to fit in and make everybody sound better. He just, so that was, I don't know how I got that, but it clicked with me how I'm supposed to work well. Basically, your good conduct medal. You're basically playing well with others. That was a skill that I was able to develop early on in my life as a civilian. So then when I went to the Marine Band after freelancing in New York for 11 years, it was just like, okay, I mean, there really weren't, everyone's like, oh, kind of adjustment. I was like, well, if you were listening, I told you, I grew up in an Irish Italian Catholic household. That's pretty strict right then and there. I knew, my neighbors were allowed to discipline me, smack me in the back of the head and send me home if I did something wrong. So no, I felt very comfortable. There's an adjustment. Look, you and I both had adjustments when we first dipped in, and we both stepped in holes along the way, and we learned the hard way. Okay, wait, maybe I need to make an adjustment here. So no, I spent 27 years, just under 27 years in the Marine Band, and the greatest human, and I will still say, besides my family, they are the greatest human beings I ever had the pleasure to work with and be associated with, and more importantly, are my friends.
And I'm gonna jump in right there because I don't think people understand the skill level of the professional abilities that y'all have as musicians in the President's Own in the Marine Band. I remember one time I asked to come over and see an audition, and it was for a saxophone position, and it was I think there was like 170, 180 people
Yeah.
show up for one spot.
Yeah.
And I remember I was talking to then uh, Captain Allen,
Yeah.
you know, and he was explaining to me the whole process while I was sitting behind the curtains in a chair back there listening in. And in between the breaks, I asked him, I said, so what happens? I was like, are y'all gonna pick somebody? They're like, no, if they don't meet the standard, they don't meet the standard. So we'll continue to search until we find somebody. We're not gonna lower our standards just to bring somebody in. We're gonna keep our standards. So like for you and all those other Marines that are in the president's home right now, like it is the cream of the crop, not only in the United States, but the world to be a part of that musical organization.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, you know, and it's one thing, auditions are it's an odd way. And I really do, sometimes I was the person, you know, like you behind the screen taking notes. And other times I was the person, what they call the adjudicator, with that person playing and trying to keep them calm, because it's really, everything's behind the screen. We have a runner to make sure you can't tell if it's a male, female, somebody wearing heels. This person coming in is nothing but a number. And then they have to play a certain amount of things. It's all merit based. And it's one of the, and I'm sure people have issues with it, but all I'm saying is that until you get to the final, so let's just say there's 150 people there, you're going to narrow that down to 20 and then 10 and then 5 and then maybe like 2 or 3 people. Then the screen comes down and now you're going to say, okay, you've whittled this down. So when the colonel comes in, when the boss comes in, you're saying, boss, we think any of these 3 people are capable of playing this position. What do you think? And then he sits with us. We have comment. Each person plays. We make comments. It's we also understand now how stressful it is for the person on the other side of the screen, because we've done that. If people forget about what that was like, then they shouldn't be on that committee. Being on that committee it's an honor and it's a privilege. And you also recognize that, you know, like I said, the stress and what's different about the way we do it. Anybody, look, if you wanted to walk in, if I gave you a trumpet, say, Aaron, go in there and do what you can do. We're a tax, funded organization. We open it to anybody because it has to be fair. And it's an uncomfortable way for someone to, to enter the service. And like you said, usually the people who win it are, have a pretty good educational background or a lot of experience, but they're just like, there are times I've heard, I'm on that committee and I hear people playing and my mouth just drops to the floor going, you got to be kidding me. This person's incredible. And then, then you have to make sure the person's background, then you'd have to go upstairs and, those candidates would have to go talk to Colonel Barkley and things like that. Then there's a whole security thing they have to go through. You're asking a lot of people, but obviously those people are out there because you've heard the group. So we're very, very fortunate. And like I said, I don't know if I don't know how my wife changed this thing. The only thing I have is, the group photo of the band back there, the one for the boss and the one standing on the South Lawn for 9/11 Memorial and the picture of my section. That's all I need. I got everything I need, man. I see that. That is awesome. There it is. Yes, that's what I have hanging. If you could see it up there, it's over there. I'm in a picture back there somewhere, but yeah, and I knew I was going to be handed one of those. But I tell you, and I'm going to get off tangent for a section, but I've played many retirements. You've been to many retirements in the band hall, but when it's your turn and you walk out there, Colonel's there, color guard comes behind you, right before the anthem, the Marine colors come down, they're barely touching my left shoulder. I mean, my hair standing up on my right, and then the band goes into the anthem, and I'm going, holy crap, this is amazing. So no, I'm like I said, I cannot say enough times how grateful I am. So
I completely agree with you. I remember being at Center Walk those Friday nights, and then y'all coming out, and then coming out to the drum caves, playing a selection, Stars and Stripes Forever.
Yeah.
Hearing the national anthem. When we go into the passing review, like it, yeah. But anyways, that's for another topic.
It really is. Really, your teacher can be going, I don't care about this.
All right. So what are you doing now?
Now I'm on the faculty for, I teach 1 day a week at James Madison University. And I fell into that just really by coincidence, a buddy of mine who teaches out there. But prior to that though, and I may go back to, I was working for the Department of Veteran Services. I'm sorry, the Virginia Department of Veteran Services for 7 months, and I may go back to that. Those helping veterans every single day intrinsically was probably, besides my service, active duty service, it was the most amazing thing I've ever done. But other things came along, and I'm teaching, I'm helping out at the music department at James Madison University 1 day a week, trying to motivate kids, try and get kids. And that's, when you're in that kind of situation with a one-on-one, whether you want to use the word mentor or leader, you're trying them to convince them of something, that there is a program, to throw trust into this program. And if you follow this, there's a leap of faith here. And you're always telling them, there's 2 things you got to do. You got to leave your ego outside the door, and you have to come in with trust. And if you can do that, and you can make that leap, you're going to get there. But for 7 months, and before that, for 7 months, I worked for the Department of Veteran Services. And I got to tell you, that was great. And before that, this is something later on where I'm sure we're going to talk about. When you come out of the service, everybody has you have a plan A. My plan A didn't work. And you have to be flexible enough. It did not work. And I was thrown for a loop on that, but I landed on my feet and I said, there's a plan B. You have to have multiple plans, and you have to know that there is not one plan that may not be flexible, be open to opportunities. Even when you're not necessarily looking for them, you're going to find them. So I was a full-time student for a semester, and that was probably the hardest program I ever did. That blew me away, how amazing that was. And if I had to go back and do it again, I'd make a few adjustments, but I might be still doing that. So I've been fortunate that I've had the skill set to land on my feet when plan A didn't work out. Then I had plan B, and I did that for a while. And now I'm on plan C, and I may go back to plan B. All because I think the skill set that that I've either been blessed with or whatever. And what my wife calls, she says, because she's always mocking me. I type like this, I'm terrible. I'm a pencil and paper. Like I said, I'm a pencil and paper guy. I took notes on things ahead of time. But soft skills, the communication skills. Can you communicate to another human being? We don't necessarily have to agree on this, but you have to be willing to convince that person, give it a try. I have an idea. Are you willing to give this a try? And then we'll make adjustments as we go along. So for whatever reason, that's been easier for me than other things, and it's kind of worked out.
I'm so glad that you brought up the soft skills thing. It's that communication is so key on not only in service but also out of service. The way we communicate in service with our fellow Marines and the jargon that we use not necessarily translates over successfully in the civilian world, but learning those skills on how to convince people, like you're saying, build that trust to get them to do something that you need them to do.
Yeah.
We learned that from the very first day that we joined the Marine Corps, and as we're growing and we're grooming and we're maturing within the institution to do this kind of things. So I'm so happy that you brought it up, because I'm a strong believer that those soft skills that we've learned in service is instrumental outside of the service. It's just really understanding ourselves to say it's a valuable skill. And I think civilian companies understand that that's an important skill, but convincing ourselves that it's a sellable skill and not just something that we do because that's what Marines do. We communicate, we get stuff done. It's just another day in the office for us. But it's an asset that companies are dying for.
Isn't it amazing how many times you look at and I don't mean to throw a younger person under the bus, because experience helps this, but one of the things I noticed right away, if I'm speaking with someone, are they looking me back in the eye? Are they answering the question that I asked them? A lot of times you're getting people looking down. These soft skills, look, it's very easy to measure hard skills. Soft skills are hard to measure, but if those, teaching someone to have confidence in those soft skills, being able to ask a question, being able to ask, whether it be a superior officer or your boss at work, being able to communicate something respectfully. You can basically ask any question you want. Can you do it in such a way that puts that person at ease? They don't feel like you're attacking them. Soft skills are, It's interesting. I think they're coming kind of back around, and it's a hard kind of thing to measure. But I think anytime you can mentor someone, you try to mentor them. I try to mentor them in soft skills.
I like that. I like that. So we're going to pivot for a second.
Yeah.
And we started to, you brought up the leadership, and that's really what this video is all about. So let me ask you, how do you define your leadership skills, or your leadership strategy when engaging now your students, or even while you were in service, engaging your Marines and your fellow peers and those above you and those below you? So, I mean, tell me about John's way of leading.
First and foremost, to me, and I heard this years ago. I don't think they do it anymore, but at the Pentagon, they used to have these prayer breakfasts, and they'd send a brass quintet to go over there. And I'm trying to remember which chairman of the Joint Chiefs said it. He got up in this room, and the only enlisted people in the room are me running the brass quintet. Everybody else is a senior officer. And he looked at everybody and he said, everybody in this room, he goes, your number one rule as a leader is to take care of the needs of the people that follow you. He goes, they come first. And it was just, I was like, and he felt so passionate about this. And that always stuck with me. And so as I was fortunate, even though I tried to talk the colonel out of it, when he gave me the title of section leader and section commander, I was like, man, there are better people for me. But I quickly realized that, well, first of all, I'll be honest, I didn't know. I was like, my gosh, that's a lot of responsibility. Do I have it? And there's a little fear. But then I said, you know what, I'm going to do this. And I'm really glad that I did, because I developed a skill set that I didn't really know that I had. I was always a big believer that my job as a leader was to put the right people in the right place and expect them to do the right thing. If I did that, I was sort of like you could say like a manager or a general manager. You draft the best players, but that doesn't mean, if I draft a tight end, and he's not a blocker, he's more than, I need a blocking tight end as well. In other words, my responsibility was to take an immensely talented group of people, which has potential to have a lot of egos too. Put them in the right place. And I know everyone has strengths and we all have weaknesses. But if I'm on section 1 of 19, my job is to what is your strength? Put that person in there and then give them the tools they need and then expect them to do the best. That to me was a win-win, because it was a win for them. Now they look, they represented, that was the whole thing for us was, hey man, way to represent, because it was never about that one individual. It was about the section and representing the whole unit, as a whole. So I felt that, putting them in the best position, showing that respect, and then also, helping people maintain work-life balance. Yeah. Some people had kids, some kids didn't do. And I know there were a lot of people that might have had complaints. So, well, so-and-so has kids and you don't have them doing this. And so I kept a running list of this. If someone had family issues, I made sure that I came back around at a later date for those people that maybe didn't have kids or were not married or whatever, what issues they had in their personal life, making it up to them. If you think you're gonna make it equal, you're gonna drive yourself crazy. Yeah. But all people want to see is that you're making an effort for them. You're showing them that as a leader, you're showing them the respect that they've earned, and they deserve that respect. So my job as leaders is that their needs get taken care of, and that I put them in the right position so that I'm not asking. Say it was like Danny Orb, or someone that was a jazz thing coming up. I wouldn't assign Kurt Dupuis to something like that. Kurt, I'm going to go send here, or send Amy over here. And Danny, I'm going to go put over here because this is Danny's strong point. You need to recognize that everybody has strengths and weaknesses. Find their strengths, give them the tools necessary, and then expect them to do the best.
I like that. And I also like that you brought out the personal life. At my current job with some of our I call them frontline leaders, where the rubber meets the dirt.
Yeah.
I brought that up to him, and I told him, I said, hey, a good leader not only understands the person at work, but understands the issues at home, because their at home affects their at work.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because it's a fine balance. And I don't think a lot of people understand that they don't really want to take the extra initiative or the extra step to get to know that person beyond the four walls of wherever they're working or their cubicle. and being able to really engage with a person on a more personal level, not to the point where you're saying, hey, you know, let's go come over to my house and we're going to drink some beers and stuff like that. But to the point where you say, you know that they have kids, they know that they're married, or this guy is single, this gal is single, or so whatever, and know those issues that they're dealing with at home, could it affects their work life. And I think that's a good skill to have as a leader, to be able to understand the whole, the whole picture of the individual, to be able to better, like you said, use their strengths and their weaknesses to, in the essence, get the job done and get it done correctly.
Well, the thing is, look, we all know you and I would be tasked to do something. Sometimes we didn't get much notice. Your phone rings at 03 and you're like, uh-oh. And I knew that at one point, at some point in time, every single one of those Marines in my section, I was going to have to make that call to them. But I also knew that if I can make adjustments in the schedule, in other words, we're all going to do some jobs we don't want to do, whatever, but they're more willing to do that if I'm working, going to say, hey, I really appreciate you keeping me off this because I have this family. I go, no problem. And now I make a call. They're like, what do you need me to do? So now they're asking me, what do you need me to do? So I don't need necessarily to lead. At this point, I'm just saying, hey, all right, this is the assignment. And they're like, and the other thing is, and I actually learned this a long time ago from my mother, who passed away early, but she was the toughest human being I've ever met in my entire life. And I mean, she had a really rough kid growing up in Brooklyn. But when you might remember when your first kid is born, we're on tour somewhere. My wife's coming out. My son's, an infant kind of stuff. And I'm calling my wife. Hey, did you check this airline? Did you get this kind of? My mom looks and she goes, what are you doing? I go, I'm just, she goes, what are you doing? I'm trying to help out. I'm showing I'm caring. She says, no, you don't. She goes, the only message you're sending her is that you don't think she's competent. Give her these. She goes, you're not sending her trust. All you're doing is you're creating doubt in her mind. She goes, if she needs help, she goes, she's going to ask. And that was something that stuck with me. And I was like, so getting to my point is that you and I both ran across a lot of leaders, or some leaders anyway, that micromanage. All that does is it just chips away at morale. And you're sending the message that leader is sending, that this Marine, I don't think, can do this because it constantly needs, a reminder or this. No. I trusted my Marines. I gave them the information. I give them one reminder. I go, you need anything, let me know. If I kept calling them and kept, you're sending the message you don't think they're competent. Mm-hmm. And that stuck with me. And I think, who knows? I mean, I'm retired now. Who knows what they say behind my back, but it worked anyway. Yeah. So I think sending the message that you trust them, it's a respect issue.
And you brought that up not only with your students now, but I mean, it's a key thing. It doesn't matter where you're at. It's building that trust to be able to, develop them into what you need them to become. And then them going back towards you and saying, I got this. Tell me what you need. Like I said, I got it. I'll take care of it. And I think it's one of the things that, one thing that I learned when I was a young Marine was, I had a platoon sergeant who told me once, I was like, look, you want to develop your people so well that they can go anywhere else in the Marine Corps and be successful. Right. I was like, but you want to build that relationship and that trust so good that they don't want to go anywhere because they want to continue to work with you. And I think, you keep bringing it up, that trust, and that's where it goes. It's there. It starts from there and develops from there. And little pieces of John gets implanted, little pieces of Aaron gets planted in there, and those seeds get in there. And that leadership style that you put into somebody else continues to grow and continues to grow.
It's fascinating because, then you look at how we do things as human beings, what we learned at our time, active duty, and then there's that whole fitness report thing where they have to fit everything in there. And I remember them, and I used to write, I'd have to write paragraphs for everyone. I would take it seriously. I'd look what I wrote the last year. It's like, look, this Marine has improved in this category. You're asking for improvement. This Marine has done it. But sometimes in a corporate type thing, they love to, I don't want to say pigeonhole people, but you want to come up with a pecking order. And it's a weird dynamic. And that's what I say. I think as leaders, we are evolving. If I had been asked to do this job, the section leader and section manager 10 years ago, I don't think I would have done nearly as good a job. I think my life experiences and also is really treat unto others as you want to be treated. One of the golden rules, right?
Yep.
I always felt that I wanted my leader to have my back. And the person who did that, with Dave Sorensen, and then I know you remember then Andy Schuler was the section leader, section commander, and I took over for Andy. And I thought Andy did a great job and really, and I kind of felt like, and you learn from other leaders, you see what works and you see what doesn't work. And it's not to say every decision I made was a gem. Trust me, I got called in a colonel's office sometimes when something didn't go the way I really thought. I was like, wow, this was a no-brainer. This is really going to work out great. And it didn't. So you know what? Now it's my responsibility to answer for that and to protect my people because they did something I asked them to do. So if I'm going to say that, then I need to be willing to say, hey, this Marine did something I asked them to do. And I think the hardest thing about leadership, and I'm sure you experience this as well, is sometimes you have to counsel people who you're good friends with.
Yes.
Yes. I got to pull them aside and I say, hey, come on, we have to have a talk. But I always start, by saying, look, and I said, look, we're friends. You know how I feel about you, but I'll go back to that same word again. I will show that person the utmost respect because they're in an uncomfortable situation. I'm in an uncomfortable situation. There's something they need to learn in this situation. So now as a leader, if I start, well, I think you could, no. Get it out there. Be respectful to this human being. Tell them what the issue is. Tell them, you know what, this is the decision you made. If we do this again, I really think let's talk about the options here. If you had done that and such, that's always the hardest is when you know someone really well. And, for what you're gearing to do, look, you're going to be doing that. You're going to get to know your coworkers really well. It's, look, I've had to do those. You've had to do those. They're not fun. I've had to be on the receiving side of those too. And I was like, all right, here it comes. And usually I was like, all right, I know this is kind of coming. And as that, New York Italian, I'm like, no, I was right, blah, blah, blah. No, I wasn't right. And I had to suffer the consequences, and that's okay.
But but those are those, going back to our time in service, I mean, those are those soft skills that we learn.
Yeah.
And it goes back to like the how not only as we have evolved as leaders, but also the institution has evolved as their form of how they lead and how they take care of people. You did 27 years, probably the way people led when you first came in probably completely changed from what it was. And it was the same thing with me. I came in and, my company Gunny and my company First Sergeant were all just missed out on, Grenada, but they're all Desert Storm Kuwaiti veterans that have fought then, and it's like, it was just all like, do, and no explanation, So it's the evolution of just, I guess, society as a whole. And it's amazing how the Marine Corps also shifted with how everything else is outside of the outside world.
I agree 100%. And I saw it change over 27 years, just within the temperature of the barracks, how people treated towards one another. Look, there's always going to be people who hate everything. There's a running joke, they say, how do you make a musician complain? Give him a job. How do you make him complain more? Give him a better job. I mean, look, there are going to be people in every field, no matter what you do, they're going to complain. And so, but I saw that, for lack of a better word, I found the barracks became more user-friendly. All of a sudden, and I don't know whether this came from COs or just human development, camaraderie got better. Support for one got better. There was always, I remember, and I would always pull aside the Marine musicians and stuff, because sometimes when you go into the parking deck, guard has a job to do, and you need to respect that job. Sometimes guard is gonna, and it was always sort of like guard and Ben, and I was like, no, guys, there's a better way to do this. And over a period of time, I got to know all those people in guard, and they changed, and all these, and then all of a sudden, I wouldn't see somebody for a year, and down in the gym, I heard, hey, Master Guns, it was a guy who was a guard here, and they remember, because I would always say, hey, where you from? and talking to good, it was just good, and once again, those soft skills broke down walls. The relationships got better. And I don't know. And I think Colonel Barkley had a lot to do with, with just making things at the barracks work better. Look, the band is always going to be a square peg in a round hole. But when he came along, and I think, the other thing is, one of the reasons why I think everybody in the band gets along is we all, and I think this is a big one. And I saw this on one of the slides, because I did read all your slides. I'm fascinated by your slide, all that. We actually do walk in each other's shoes. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. Because you could be a great soloist one week, and you know what? Next week you're out there at Arlington and it's 28 degrees, or you're at a change command ceremony down in Norfolk and it's 98 degrees, and you have support for one another. The troops, no one wants to see anybody fall out. You're all looking after one another. I think walking in another human being's shoes, if a younger person looks at someone who's a leader, knowing that they did the same job, because in other words, you should never ask someone to do something that you've never done yourself.
Yes.
In some capacity or something similar. The job description may not be exactly the same, but they need to know, yeah, I've been there, man. I've done this. There's a certain understanding with that. And look, in the role that I had, I've pretty much done everything that unit is going to do. And I'm grateful for all those. And I can now turn around to a junior member and say, hey, I know how you feel here, because those first couple of jobs, someone's going to fall out. You don't want them to do that, because all of a sudden that works. It starts working on their brain. And the next time that comes, say, hey, look, you got this. This is the way you're going to do this. I got your back. And no, but I think walking in another person's shoes is huge.
And that goes into the giving some empathy on the things, like not being so hard on them, because there's times for it and there's time isn't, and everybody goes up through their ups and downs.
Right.
To be able to do that. One of the other things that I really appreciate from our time together was like y'all's ability to open the doors. When I showed up to the barracks and I was doing my left seat, right seat with my counterpart, he told me, he's like, hey, the band does their thing, they're their thing. The DMV does their thing, the marchers do their thing, and we stay over here on this side of the street with H&S Company, and that's just how we do it. And I'm just like, well, I was like, where's the relationship building? I don't want them to see me as, the drill master. I want them to see me as Gunny and more of an approachable person. But one of the things that they gave me as guidance when I first came to the barracks was, and it was Colonel Watson at the time, and he goes, because I came straight off the drill field, and he told me, he's like, leave the drill field mentality behind. He's like, you should be able to talk to a private or a PFC the same manner that you'll talk to a general. And I took that to heart, and I hope I ran with it my entire time there, that everybody is important. Everybody's role is specific in supporting the mission and to be able to get things accomplished. And I think that's one of the important things to learn as, for us as young, business students that are looking for those leadership positions as we're going through in whatever organization that we're in, is everybody's important. And as you progress and you move up, you can't forget about all the people that still make things happen.
You're exactly, when you say the mission needs to be accomplished, and we're going to do this in a group effort, but you need to know this, and your teacher needs to know this, because the very first question, we'd be up there in operations, some job would come in, a cake cutting, whatever, the Pentagon, the first question we would ask, is Gunny Calderon going to be there? Because if you were there, we knew, and they need to know this. Your teacher needs to know that if you were there, our chances of success on this gig were just, okay, this is going to be fine, because people couldn't stay to a same script. And I remember it was the War College and something was going off about a cake cutting, which is pretty simple. And I'm looking at you, if I'm up on the balcony, you're going, don't do it. I'm like, okay. And I'm like going, how could it not be? Oh. But look, people, anxiety kicks in. And now how do we lower this? Because if we lower this, we're thinking, and you're going to, whether it be business, you're going to have a subordinate, someone come to you and you get a sense that, whether it be anxiety or something is creeping up. Look, we all have leadership skills, but if you think you're going to treat everyone the same, That's a mistake. You cannot treat. I knew of those 19 people, including my, in that section, there are certain people I can lean into. Certain people, if I leaned into it, just going to backfire. So I had to back up the truck and say, okay, in order to approach this person to get the mission accomplished, I need to do such and such. I wasn't treating them any differently or putting them under different rules, but my approach to them was different, because in order to communicate what needs to happen to them, it wasn't going to be the same as grabbing someone and go, come on. There are a couple of guys I could say, come on, get in there, grill a little bit. But if I did it with somebody else, the mission was not, it wasn't going to go well. So you need to know your audience at all times.
And that is just as important as even as a leader, and a leader coming in, for me coming into the barracks, Marines like yourself and the Marines are like in the DMB, you see guys like us come and go. And for me, it was one of the things where like, I wanted y'all to get to know me for me, but for me to do that, I had to go into your area. And I think it's important that, my peers in my cohort and my colleagues, they understand that, as a leader and somebody that's coming into a brand new organization, you got to get out from behind your desk and you have to go down there and meet those people and meet them and introduce themselves, because all they know is you're a new face that's coming in here that's probably going to make change, doesn't understand, and do all these things. And you have to ask the question, majority of the time I always ask the question, why do we do this?
Right.
What's the why behind it? Because the common question, the answer that I always received was, it's just the way we always done it. I was like, I understand. It's the way we always did it, but why have we always done it? And especially like in the military, we have orders, we have policies, we have instructions on how to do it. We go back to the cake cutting and the birthday balls thing. And, when I first got there, we go to one place, it was one thing, go to another place, it was another thing.
Yeah.
It was like, it shouldn't be that way. There's a book that says, how do we do things?
How to exactly do it.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I'll take that a step further. I had the privilege of doing 7 inaugurations. Now, and every time you get all these people trying to reinvent the wheel, if there's any unit that knows how to run the inauguration, it's the United States Marine Band, because we've been doing it since 1801. So we know exactly, I could tell you right now, I could run an inauguration, what the procedure is, who's going to talk when, what music is necessary. And yet you'd run it all the time. Someone's got a clipboard and they're making changes and you're like thinking, there's a simple way to do this, gentlemen. Let's get together. Let's meet. Let's run down the order. Who has the suggestions? Now we get to the actual rehearsal. Efficient use of time.
That's it. And that's a good, also great point. You respect people's time.
Yes.
If you just go out and have the conversation, you'll learn a lot from the people that have been there before.
Yeah.
And you'll understand why certain things go the way they go. You bring up the inauguration, you did 7 of them. Majority of the people that were in those leadership positions, that was their one and only, and then they were gone. And as us as young emerging leaders within our organizations, I think that's also an important thing to remember is, don't come in there and just start trying to make change. You have to sit back, you have to visualize, you got to take it all in, you have to understand it, and then get to know why the people do a certain thing. And maybe they do things because they're just so used to that, but how are you going to communicate and get them, like we talked about, build that trust to be able to shift into another manner of doing things if they're so accustomed to doing things for a certain way in such a long time.
One of the other things is that, we talked about the why, and it wasn't, but sometimes the answer is, hey guys, we got to do this because we have to. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. One of the greatest, look, I think the world of Colonel Fettig, there are a lot of times, we would butt heads and stuff like that, but I'll never forget the time around the parade deck, and I don't know what the event, what it was for, might have been a change command, but it was well below the cutoff temperature where the instruments are going to begin to freeze up. And we were told, Major Buren kept saying, hey, if it's below X degrees, we are simply not going. So we get out there that day for the phase 2, and it's below that cutoff. And the colonel walks out there and talks to us, said, look, I know what I said. He said, but this is beyond my control. He goes, I apologize, but we are going to have to do this. I need you guys to do this. And you know what? No one complained, because he walked out there with us, and just said, and told us the truth, and just said, we're going to have to do this. I know I told you, but we're going to have to do this. I sympathize with you. Hey, he heard what we said. We heard what he said. Everybody went like this. Let's do it.
And that's it. You
And
know,
in 2 sentences, he took care of the whole thing. There it is.
but you have to have a leader that's willing to go in there and say, "Hey, I admit that I was wrong.
Yeah.
That it's just what it is. We have to do that. And I need your help."
Yeah. And so, in other words, there's no crime in whether you want to say being wrong or giving us information that you believe to be accurate that no longer is. There's no crime. We're all going to be doing that. But it's how you handle it. Look, everybody talks about, the comeback player of the year. Well, you know what? At one point, in order to be that comeback player of the year, that player got knocked down. That's why you have a comeback player. So if the boss made a call, it didn't work out. Hey, man. And he came out, owned up to it. And well, like I said, within 2 sentences, everybody stopped complaining. And like, okay, let's do this, man. Let's show us how it's done. And I was like going, yes, it was great. And it's amazing in 2 sentences.
So that now that you bring up being knocked down, how has your transition out of the service into, I think you brought up earlier that your plan A didn't work out, your plan B didn't work out.
Well, it's funny with your ego. I got to tell you, when they first dropped my papers, I gave them like a year notice because of my title. I had to give them plenty of time, help them transition to other people, train other people. But for that first 2 weeks that I dropped my, so I got out in July of 2019. So summer of 2018, I remember going into admin, dropping off my papers and stuff like that. And then for 2 weeks, almost sort of like I don't know, for lack of a better, like a buyer's remorse, because it was ego getting in the way. Because for those, 26 years and then 27 I retired, but for those first 26 years, people say, "Oh, what do you do?" Hey, I don't know, I'm President's own United States Marine Band. And all of a sudden I realized I can't say that anymore. And so ego really got in my way. And I was like, wow. And no, but I've been thinking for a long time I had taken a lot of prereq classes and done well in those classes. But I wanted to do something with physical therapy. There's a great physical therapy assistant program, and I don't know how I got into it, but I did. And I had so that was about a year of physical and physical. Trying to think, it was about a year. All the prereq classes that I did, but the anatomy and physiology class was brutal, and it wasn't. It was just on a Monday, you get a 100-page PowerPoint. On a Wednesday, you get another 95 PowerPoint. And I would do fine in the quizzes, but it was just when you had these unit exams and in where every single nerve, what nerve innervates what muscle, the insertion and entry point for every single muscle go down the figure. So that, I could have stayed with the program. I would have to repeat one part of that class, but then COVID hit, and that's not the way I kind of learned. So I began to, phase. I said, well, I don't know if this is necessarily for me. And it wasn't that easy. There was a lot of inner, say, okay, what do I really want to do? And then I did, and I had to go through training. I ended up doing, a plan B was doing something for helping the veterans, because I always knew if I was going to do something, I wanted to help kids with special needs, because in the city where I live, in the city of Falls Church, for 15 years, I was on the Special Education Advisory Committee. We were an offshoot of the school board. I think everybody should get involved in their community, coach sports, sit on the school board, city council, do something, you participate. All politics are local. You know what? People just want to care. Is my garbage going to be picked up when it's supposed to, or my school's open? Get involved in your local community. So I tried to get involved in my local community. So doing something for veterans, because when I used to do the honor flight jobs, I got to tell you, nothing like them. Nothing like meeting World War II, Vietnam vets, Korean vets. And when I first started doing those jobs, maybe like a third of them were in wheelchairs. And then it got to be where 2/3 of them were in wheelchairs, and meeting them and and they were just the most amazing human beings. So I had to pass a 4-hour exam for the state of Virginia, for the VA, and all this kind of stuff. And so for 7 months, I literally help hundreds of veterans get their packets together for their benefits. But I felt a little itching back towards music, and then James Madison called. It's funny, but once a week I go back to the office in Fairfax for the veterans, and I have coffee. And I talk to my boss, and he keeps saying, "Look, you should come back," and I may come back and do that. No, the pay wasn't very good, but I wasn't doing it for the pay. Yeah. I mean, the intrinsic value of hearing, I had a Vietnam vet on the phone. He was shot down twice, well-spoken guy, older guy, obviously, and when I called him back, he just said, I am so grateful that you called. He said, I thought people forgot about me. And that broke my heart. I got choked up when I was talking to this gentleman, Here's a guy who served his country, got back pains, shot down twice. And I'm thinking, I said, sir, I go, not my book. I made a point of making my calls back as quick as I possibly could. In fact, I got to the point where the VA started giving out the Fairfax office number for somebody who was like living in Chesapeake or in Roanoke. And because our office became the office that returned calls, because the night before I go through all the messages and I call people back 8 a.m. I start making my calls. And I had people from Andrews Air, I say, well, I can put you in touch with people. No. You're the office that returns call, and people would come see us. And I had one of the VSRs, a veteran service representative, come up to me and she goes, it's amazing because you have a way of talking to every veteran like you're on their side. And I go, I am on their side.
That's right.
I am on their side, These are men and women who've done something. I go, they're all heroes in my book, and then when you look at all the numbers, approximately 9% of the population of the United States are veterans, but they account for almost 20% of the suicides. We can do better for our veterans. So when I was there, I just took it upon. It's like I keep making a case to myself that I should go back there, and I might. Like I said, I go back every week and I have coffee there, and I sit down and before they open up shop, and it's just it was a remarkable thing that I'd done. But I'm also enjoying what I'm doing now, teaching. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't mean to sound like I'm looking through the world with rose-colored glasses, but whether it be working with, it's not like JMU's paying me a ton of money to work with these kids, but I had a lot of people. Like, here's the example. I'm not going to see the kids this week because it's Thanksgiving week. In the middle of December, they have to play a jury, which is kind of like play a performance. For each, they have to do this at the end of each semester. And I said to them, I said, look, I'm not going to see you guys for a week. I said, I'm telling you right now, and only 2 of them have done it so far. I go, you let me know. I go, we will do a Zoom lesson. I said, I will volunteer my time. I want to make sure you guys, I said, don't play for Thanksgiving. Don't play the first day you get home. Spend time with your family, but find a day within this week period. You call me, we'll do a Zoom lesson or we'll FaceTime a lesson so that you have contact with me and you play through your piece to me. I want to hear it, and we're going to talk about this. So far, only 2 of them have done it. Just because I want to see them do well. I want them to know that I am in their corner because people have been in my corner, and I guarantee people have been in your corner.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you're bringing up these experiences outside of the military, because I think it's important to know, and like you said, getting involved with your community. Leadership doesn't have to be in a business organization. Leadership is, how do you develop your community as well? How do you build your community up to be better? And you getting involved with the younger generation, that's our future right there. And how are we shaping that up? And how are we making the future of our community, our nation, just making good men and women to continue to follow in our footsteps. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it's important to realize and to note that it's not about the corporate world. Leadership flows across all parts of our daily lives, and that's it.
Well, you could be a leader in your community in different kinds of ways. Like I said, youth sports is great because look, that's a lot of drag on your time. You're watching other people's kids, your kids play sport, getting involved. And it doesn't have to be the head coach. It could be the guy, who rakes the softball field after the girls play, or the baseball field after the boys play, collecting the equipment, making sure everything is done. We are, being a leader, those kids see that. Walking out to the mound, I'm talking to a kid who's crying on the mound because he hit some kid with a baseball. I'm like going, he's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. Just setting that example. You do it every single day as a dad.
Yeah.
That is leadership, whether you want to say, no, it's parental skills. And leadership does not have to be a cut and dry. We model behavior all the time. There were certain times, we were at the White House, or the colonel would say something, and I'm like, oh boy. And I'm in front of, if I were around Kurt or Matt or someone who's also, a master gunner, sergeant, I'd say, all right, guys, this, whatever. But if I was around a junior member, kept my mouth shut.
Yeah.
Let them complain to me. I am not going to complain to them. Let them know fact that chain of command that, and and that's, they have every right to come to me and bitch and complain.
Yeah.
I'd rather them bitch and complain to me than air it out in the locker room, because that now you start to build dissent. And bad news travels better than good news, pessimism. So I would always tell them, you got a complaint, you got a complaint, you come to me. And I let them know. I said, look, you have an issue. If you don't like the way that I solved the issue, you have a right to go see the drum major, but you have to talk to me about it first. In fact, I will walk you to the drum major to say, and then we'll talk about it there. So giving them an avenue. I don't care. My sister worked for, Morgan Stanley Dean Witter for almost 30 years. My other sister was a school teacher for 37 years. People are going to have complaints.
Yeah.
And you have to give them a vehicle to air those complaints, because if not, then bad things start seeping in. So I tried to give them a chance to say, hey, and sometimes I was the one to bear bad news. Certain assignments I have to make, and sometimes maybe I couldn't manage that work-life balance. And I'm going to say, hey, your number came up today. There's nothing I can do about it. I need you to go, but I need you to go do this. I will make it up, so giving the ample opportunity. But I would also keep a running tally of every assignment, and I would total things up at the end of the month. And I'd say, hey, look, I kept this as evenly as humanly possible. It's not always going to be perfect, and it's an ongoing type project. But I think leadership in your community helps whatever you're going to do, at work, in your personal life. So I encourage everyone to take leadership in their community.
I like it. I like it. All right, John. Parting shots. What kind of nuggets of wisdom, extra tools that we could throw in our toolbox? What do you have to offer as your parting words to my professor, my colleagues, whoever falls upon this video on YouTube?
I say take advantage of if someone offers you an educational opportunity, and I would always tell these young Marines that if you get an educational opportunity, take it. Whether it's tuition assistance, don't stop. Because look, you'd find some young kids that I'm getting out after 4 years, all this kind of, I'm like, okay, I get that. But along the way, you're going to pick up some skill set. Your resume is already different because you served your country as a United States Marine. Right now, that's going to open up doors for you. But what educational opportunities can you take to grow as a Marine, as a human being, as a student? Take advantage of all those, because, especially if you're getting financial assistance. And the other one, and this is one of the biggest differences that I saw in my 27 years. If you need help, ask. I cannot stress that enough. Ask. Mental health in the military, my 27 years. Now, you could self-report now. You can just go up to Walter Reed and say, hey, I need some assistance. And it's not, there were so many military, retired military folks or people separated when I was working, for the Virginia Department of Veteran Services. They didn't want to claim they had certain mental health because they were afraid that they're, well, I would get taken off this assignment or that, which breaks my heart, because these are people that were really good at what they did, but they're, but whether it be anxiety, depression, alcoholism, or something, or drug use came on later on in life because they didn't get the mental health when they needed. So the biggest parting thing I would say, besides taking care of any opportunity comes along for educational that will improve you, grab it. Don't be afraid to ask for help. I cannot stress that enough.
I love it. And as always, I appreciate your time, your words of wisdom. For everybody else, like I said, thank you for your time and coming out and watching us as we discuss leadership, life, just everything that involves in our ability to go from active service to the civilian world. It's a big transition for all of us, but it doesn't just necessarily have to do about people in the service and out of service. Everybody goes into a transition from one job to another, from one culture to another. So continue to follow along, catch back up with us next time as we continue to discuss different forms of leadership. John, my friend, thank you. As always, it's been, I don't know, a year and a half. You were there when I received my award last time we see each other.
Yeah, that was great, man. You deserve that. I was so proud of you.
So it's great to see you, my friend, and this won't be the last time. So everybody else, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.